Hello, welcome to Elizabeth Reads. I'm going to be reading from the Usborne Greek myths. Today, we're going to learn about Eros and Psyche. My daughter is the most beautiful girl in the world, boasted Psyche's father. She is even more beautiful than Aphrodite, added her mother. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, overheard them boasting and was absolutely furious. How could any ordinary mortal girl be more beautiful than a goddess? She stormed off to find her son Eros. Eros was a mischievous youth who had a bow and magic arrows. When he shot someone with one of these arrows, they felt no pain, but they fell instantly in love with anyone they saw. Eros, commanded Aphrodite, I want you to make that wretched girl Psyche fall in love, preferably with a hideous monster. Eros at once went in search of Psyche. He enjoyed making the most unlikely people, even the gods, fall in love. He found Psyche asleep on a grassy mountain slope. He pulled out an arrow from his quiver, but stumbled on a stone, and the arrow went straight into his own leg. He immediately fell deeply in love with Psyche. He gazed at Psyche, wondering what to do. If Aphrodite ever found out he loved this beautiful girl, she would be furious with him. Somehow, he had to keep it a secret. After a while, Eros thought of a plan. He carried Psyche, who was still asleep, to his wonderful palace and laid her gently on a bed, and then he left her. That night, and for many nights, Eros went to the palace when it was dark and left each morning before it grew light at dawn. At first, Psyche was frightened by this man she was never able to see, but he was so gentle with her and spoke to her so sweetly, she soon looked forward to his visits. You must never try to find out who I am, he warned her. Psyche's sisters heard she was living alone in a fine palace and went to visit her. They wanted to know all about the mysterious man and teased her. Perhaps he already has a wife and lots of children, said one. Perhaps he won't let you see him because he's so hideous, laughed another. Perhaps he's a monster, giggled the third sister. Go away, I won't listen to you, Psyche said, putting her hands over her ears. But when her sisters had gone, she felt just as curious as they did. She longed to see him. That night, when Eros was asleep, Psyche crept downstairs and lit a tiny oil lamp. She tiptoed back with it and held it up so she could look at the man she had never seen before. She was overjoyed that he was young and so handsome, and she knew that she loved him. Leaning over him for a closer look, a drop of hot oil from the lamp fell on his arm. He woke up and glared angrily at Psyche. And then he leapt up and without saying a word, he stormed out of the palace into the dark night. Psyche threw herself down on the bed and cried until the dawn. All day she wandered sadly through the palace and that night waited, hoping desperately the man she had seen would come to her. But although she lay awake all night, he never came. For weeks, Psyche waited and wept, and then for months she searched everywhere for the man she loved. When she could bear it no longer, she prayed to Aphrodite. Goddess of love, please help me, she begged. Aphrodite heard her, but wouldn't easily forgive her. It's my son Eros you love, but you can't expect a god to love a silly mortal girl like you, she said. Though he just might come back to you if you do the tasks I give you. Psyche promised she would do anything. Aphrodite took her to a barn. On the floor was a huge pile of corn, rye, and barley. Your first task is to separate this grain into 3 different heaps by the end of the day, said Aphrodite. Psyche sat down and began to sort the grain. After an hour or so, she realized it would take her years to finish the task. She stared at the huge pile of grain in despair, and then she saw a long column of ants marching across the floor. When they reached the pile, each ant picked up a grain and carried it to one of the 3 heaps. By evening, all the grain had been sorted into heaps of corn, rye, and barley, and then the ants marched away. Aphrodite was not pleased that Psyche had completed the task. She didn't know that Eros had sent the ants to help Psyche. Your next task is to fetch a box of Persephone's beauty ointment from the underworld, she said. Poor Psyche didn't even know how to find the entrance to the underworld, but with more secret help from Eros, she bravely went in, crossed the river Styx with the boatman, and came to the throne of Persephone. The queen of the underworld gave Psyche the box of ointment, and with Eros' help, Psyche quickly found her way out of the underworld again. She had been warned she must not open the box, but Psyche thought if she put just a little beauty ointment on her face, she would be more beautiful and Eros might love her again. Stopping for a moment, she lifted the lid of the box. It didn't have beauty ointment in it, but everlasting sleep, which was death. At once, Psyche fell asleep. Eros, who was watching, rushed to Psyche and blew the sleep out of her eyes to wake her up. Psyche then took the box to Aphrodite, while Eros flew to Zeus, the most powerful of all the gods. "Please, Zeus," begged Eros, "I want to marry Psyche, but I can't unless you first make her immortal." Zeus was in a good mood, so he smiled and agreed, and Eros took Psyche to Mount Olympus, where he married her, and they were very happy. The end. Bye-bye for now.